Happy Friday. Apologies for being a couple minutes late. I'm not actually on Libertarian Standard Time today. I was actually just dealing with a little bit of a situation. Can I ask you guys something? Why are the police useless? Like, truly. Have you ever met a more useless group of human beings in your life than the police? Because I have yet to meet a more useless group of human beings in my life than the police. They take my money, and then on the rare, extremely rare occasion where I actually need them to do their jobs, they just pretend that they, don't really have to do anything, and it's more important for them to go create another speeding ticket trap and all of that. I truly I don't understand this back the blue bullshit at all, because they don't do anything. There couldn't be a more uninterested group in the entire world in doing their job than the police. Truly, truly useless. Fucking useless. So I was dealing with a little bit of a situation, and that was what I was doing, and that's why I'm late. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We are here to do happy hour. For those asking what happened, I will tell you guys later. I will tell my private, trusted community what happened. I'm not putting it on the internet. It's not an emergency. I'm just really pissed off. That's all it is. So guys, how welcome to happy hour. Happy Friday. We got a lot to get through before we jump into it, but I want to start off with this. Since I just started off with something pissy, I wanted to, do something happy. So you guys know that my birthday is next week. I will, of course, be 29 again for the what? 13th time? It's my 13th, 29th birthday. And I was very excited today to get a card from some people in the cult, and you guys sent me a nice gift card as well. A gift card was received, and so I really do appreciate it. And I wanted to read the card that you guys sent me. It says, "The world needs more of you. You get it. You get how much loving kindness the world needs right now, and you put your heart into making it happen however you can. Thank you for being that kind of person, one who truly cares and makes a difference. Hope some of that goodness comes back to you today. Happy birthday. Love, the cult." I really do appreciate it, guys. It made my day. I was absolutely not expecting a birthday card. And I'm going to enjoy this here gift card, and I will probably buy beer with it. And it's got a very nice texture. It's glitter. I do like it. So thank you guys. So, and apparently it's vanilla. I don't know what that means exactly. But thank you guys. It was a surprise, and I was not expecting it. So I really do appreciate it. And I want to let everyone know. And I'll be making an official thank you post, and I will show you guys pictures of it as well. I just haven't had a chance to do that because it's been a crazy day. It has been absolutely insane. And I want to start to unpack that insanity in a moment. But first, I want to tell you what we're watching for happy hour, because you guys know we have been working our way steadily through all of the testimony in the Texas House of Representatives for this bill that would ban gender modification surgery in minors. And there's like 13 hours of this testimony. And I think we're about halfway through. We're actually watching all of it because it's really informative. And it's actually a really good use of time. You hear arguments from both sides and stuff like that. Well, yesterday we were watching, and a very interesting character offered some testimony. This person has a website called The Gender Doctor. This person is very proud of themselves and all of their credentials. This person is obviously trans. This person was very argumentative and whiny and elitist and snooty, and was like, everything that we don't like about trans activists, this person just embodies all of it to a T. And the testimony that this person was giving, and is actually still giving, because it got so he got so like combative and snooty that it just kept going. There were people on both sides that were asking this person questions. I think their testimony lasted like an hour. We aren't even through the entire thing yet. But we did find this person on the internet and found their epic grift. They offer webinars. They offer training courses for $350. I will not be paying $350 for one of their courses. And as it turns out, they also wrote a children's book. This person actually wrote a children's book. And it's called Stacey's Not a Girl. And there's a video about it on YouTube, and I'll read you the description in 1 second. But Naruto, I have this super chat. Thank you, Naruto. Not sure if you saw, RFK is running for president as a Democrat. I did see it, Naruto. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I've already seen some libertarians saying that RFK is like their guy, even though he's running as a Democrat. I don't really know that much about him, to be honest. I knew he's very like against the vaccine, but I don't really know that much about him. So I guess we'll see. So let's read this this description of this here video. Colt Saint Amand, PhD, MD, he, they, is a licensed psychologist and physician, well, a resident, with expertise in gender and sexuality. Dr. Colt is an openly transgender, queer, two-spirit man who works with the LGBTQI plus children, teens, and adults and their loved ones. One of their many accomplishments is authoring a children's book, Stacey's Not a Girl, which is the story of a child who knows they're not a girl like everyone says they are, but at the same time, they don't fit into the boy box either. Join us for this live 10th episode of DM Maynard's educational interview series, reflective conversations on gender transition for parents, partners, other family and educators, and professionals working with the trans community. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we are watching today. We're going to get a little bit more background on this person before we continue to work our way through the testimony in the Texas House of Representatives regarding the gender modification ban for minors, and we're going to see what this person's really all about when they aren't, testifying in public for a bill, and hear some more backstory and the things that they say when they think they're only talking to people who agree with them. Yes, Sin, who pointed out something about two-spirit. Hang on. Yes, Sin is pointing out correctly. You are only two-spirit if you are a Native American. Is this person really a Native American? They don't look Native American. I mean, like, it's like that. I'm sorry, this person does not look Native American to me. I could be wrong. Like, these are they parents. They don't look Native American. So is this person appropriating Native American culture? Kind of seems like it. A little bit. But before we get into that, I have some other orders of business. Now, of course, I want to remind everyone to always make sure you are subscribed to my Substack, Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. And this just became even more important because one of the reasons it's been such a busy day is that I woke up this morning to find that Elon Musk has banned Substack links on Twitter because Elon Musk is pissed off that Substack is coming out with a feature that kind of resembles Twitter, to be honest. Now, Substack is a completely different platform than Twitter. Substack does a whole lot of things that Twitter don't do. If Twitter and Substack are fighting, I will absolutely take Substack's side every single minute of every single day. So that happened, which is interesting. Now, I have figured out a workaround for anyone who is writing on Substack that needs a workaround. I wrote an article about kind of what I did. Essentially, you just need a URL shortener to solve the problem. Basically, what's happening whenever someone either posts a Substack link, or even if you tag the main Substack account, even if you just tag them, Twitter will automatically disable the tweet so that no one can share it, no one can retweet it, no one can like it, and no one can reply to it. Now, the link in the tweet will still work. But part of the benefit of being on Twitter is that people share your stuff. And so when Twitter is disabling these links, they're not making it so the link doesn't work. The link still works. They're just not allowing anyone to retweet it, to like it, or to reply to it, which means it ain't going anywhere. But you can get around, and you can see this here. I basically just posted this tweet. Let me make this a little bit bigger. And all I did was tag Substack Inc. And then I tried to retweet it just to see what would happen. And it says that these actions have been disabled by Twitter. So the workaround for this entire thing is you basically need a URL shortener. I have my own URL shortener for unwoke.info. And so I basically ran the URL through a URL shortener, got a different link, and I put that on Twitter. And then instead of, so one of the problems is it's going to take out the Twitter embed. So the article is no longer going to be embedded in the tweet. But the easy workaround for that is just to paste the header image that you have for the article into the tweet. So it still looks nice. And if you do it this way, like I have right here, you can see this is the URL shortener link. People can still retweet it. People can still like it. And it's a nice little workaround for right now. But I'm going to say this. This is some bullshit. This is some actual bullshit. And probably about an hour ago, Matt Taibbi, who is one of the authors of the Twitter files, and he's got a really big Substack. It's got like over 300,000 subscribers or something like that. And Matt Taibbi sent a note out to all of his subscribers saying that he would no longer use Twitter because of this bullshit. And he actually said that he talked to Twitter and Twitter told him, well, why don't you just post your articles on Twitter? And Matt Taibbi was like, nah, bro. No. So Matt Taibbi is sticking with Substack. I am all in on Substack. I love Substack. I like the team at Substack. They do a really good job. I've had, meetings with them about, how to get more subscribers on mine because they saw that I had a really fast growing Substack. So they reached out to me to try to help. Like their platform just works. Their development is deliberate. I just really like the platform a lot. And it's so much nicer than Twitter. It really is. It's like the land of adults. It's the land of people who actually read stuff and want to have conversations. And it's just really, really nice. So I am team Substack on this one. I think this is bullshit. And I really hope that at least maybe Matt Taibbi, if no one else, is able to nail down Elon Musk to reverse this boneheaded decision. I have to give Elon Musk credit. When a decision is made that causes backlash, like I think this is going to cause backlash, Elon Musk seems to be open to reversing the decision. He's like, okay, we tried that. That didn't work out so well. And especially when you're talking about every single author of the Twitter files has a Substack publication. They run their entire businesses on Substack. So it makes no godly sense to me. So that's something you're going to find on my Substack today. Now, more importantly, and I really do want to talk about this seriously for a second. I posted an article last night about how I believe that the conservative right is going to create a trans martyr. I really do believe this. Now, several months ago, James Lindsay tweeted out this idea of drag Floyd. Drag Floyd is essentially it's this. The leftist Marxist regime is going to try to capitalize on some act of violence against the LGBTQ target, maybe a drag queen, to turn it into a huge summer 2020 mass line if they can. I'm calling this Operation Drag Floyd for the obvious and hilarious reasons. Essentially, the idea is that the left wants there to be an act of violence against a drag queen or a trans person so that they can capitalize on it and riot all summer and gain more political power and destabilize the system. And I'm convinced that the right is going to give it to them. I am now convinced that conservative influencers on the right, the Daily Wire in particular, have riled up their audience to such a degree that violence is all but inevitable. Because think about it. Conservatives have never been more teed off about trans people than they are right now. Every single day, almost every conservative leaning outlet is feeding their audience a diet of outrage porn about trans people all effing day. This has been going on for months. And the rhetoric on the conservative right, and I'm sorry if there are conservatives listening, but this is just the truth, and you can accept the truth or you can cover your ears. It is entirely up to you. The rhetoric on the conservative right is so extreme now that they are openly talking about committing acts of violence against trans people. And I know that because just a couple hours ago, in response to this article, I had someone actually tell me there's no other possible way to handle this. We have to play this game. Conservatives are literally telling me that they see no other way to defeat transgenderism. And I don't really think transgenderism is something that needs to be defeated. I think that's gross. But conservatives are actively telling me that they don't see any other way around an act of violence against a trans person. Conservatives are going to shoot themselves in the foot. Someone, all it takes is one person, guys. One person who has been listening to this conservative trans outrage porn for months, every single day. One person who has become unhinged from reality and deranged by consuming too much of this media. It only takes one person to do something stupid. It wouldn't even be that hard to do something stupid. And when that happens, and I now believe it is inevitable that it will happen, when that happens, it is going to completely fuck every single one of us. It is going to completely destroy all of the work that we have been doing. And I don't want to hear from conservatives. Conservatives would never lash out like that. Bro, I was at January 6th. I was at the Capitol. Don't tell me that conservatives will never lash out. Don't tell me I didn't see what my lying eyes, are trying to convince me that I did. I saw conservatives lashing out right in front of me at the Capitol. And if we're honest about it, if conservatives hadn't lashed out at the Capitol, Ashley Babbitt would still be alive. That is the hard truth that I don't think people want to hear. If conservatives had not lashed out at the Capitol on January 6th, Ashley Babbitt would still be alive. I don't care if there were feds in the crowd. I'm sure there were. I don't care if there was Antifa in the crowd. I'm sure there were. But it was not the majority. It was absolutely not the majority. The majority of people lashing out and breaking things and riling people up were conservatives. I was there. I saw it with my own eyes. It takes one conservative to do something crazy, to commit an act of violence against a trans person or a drag queen, and we are off to the races, my friend. And I am absolutely convinced now, based on seeing the response to this. First off, I know that I'm not the only one who sees this problem, because some of the response I've gotten to this article has absolutely said, Carlin, you're right. I'm seeing this too. So I'm not the only one who's assessing it like this. But the fact that I quite literally had a conservative tell me a couple hours ago that there's just no other way, I'm like, They're literally going to create this problem. So I hope, guys, you will read this article. It is on my Substack now. It is called, it has this great image of trans Jesus that I'm sure will not get me in any trouble at all. But it's called "The Conservative Right is Going to Create a Trans Martyr." You can read my full thoughts on why that is. I'm sure I'll do a podcast or another video about it at some point in the next couple days, but I'm not ready to do that yet because we have other stuff to do. And I hope you'll read it and subscribe to the Substack. And of course, while you're there, if you want to sign up for a subscription for $5 a month, $50 a year, you guys fund the work I'm doing, and I really do appreciate it. I can't do it without you. Most of my articles on my Substack will be behind a paywall moving forward because people are stealing my work and I don't like it. But I did actually leave these two articles, the trans martyr one and the Elon Musk one. Those, excuse me, those are free because I think that both those messages are important. Okay. So the other thing I want to make sure people know is I do have another Substack called Unwoke Art. It's unwokeart.substack.com. Now, if you find yourself being offended by the trans martyr Jesus image that I made, then there is an article on this Substack explaining why I did it. I would encourage you to go read it. All right? Because I think that we should be using this imagery to provoke thought. And I think the image is beautiful. I really do. But I understand some people might not like it. Take the time to go read about it. You can find that on unwokeart.substack.com. All right, guys, before we get into our show today, as always, I need a beer. So I just got back from the beer store. I have 4 beers. I'm not going to be drinking all 4 beers, but I want to show you what they are and I want to tell you about them. And then you guys are going to get a chance to vote on which beer I drink first. All right, let me grab my beers. And we're going to go in order from light to darkest. And I actually have several dark beers today. I only have 1 sour and the rest are either a stout or a porter, which are generally my favorite. But we're going to start with the sour. This is from Woodland Farms Brewery. Where is that? In Kittery, Maine. And it is called Ruby Slippers. And it is a raspberry sour ale. And it says, what says German style sour raspberry wheat beer better than a Centaur with red kicks and an old school boombox? Nothing. Nothing at all. So that's going to be our first one, Ruby Slippers. It is a raspberry sour ale. The next one is called Gordian Knot. And it's from Coos Brewing Company. I think this is New Hampshire because, yeah, it's in Colebrook, New Hampshire. And this is a judiciously, can you guys see? A judiciously spiced squash porter. And it doesn't have a description or anything. That's all it is. A judiciously spiced squash porter. So that's our second option. A third option, now we're getting into our stouts. This one is called Cocoa Love. And it is from, where is it from? Tail Spinner Brewery. Where's that? I don't know. It doesn't have an address. Too bad. Too bad, so sad. But this is called Second Breakfast, and it is an imperial pastry stout, and it's a nitro. And nitro is important because that's like a storage method, and it makes it extra creamy. Guinness is nitro. So anytime like you have a Guinness that like has that really nice creamy pour, that's going to be a nitro beer. They just taste a little bit different. And it says taste bold, rich, creamy with notes of cacao nibs, vanilla bean, amber syrup, and coffee. And then it says tail. Cocoa Love Second Breakfast Imperial Pastry Stout is brewed with the things we love for those we love. Packed with it's New Hampshire. Packed with local New Hampshire flavor from Flight Coffee Company, Space Dog Blend, cacao nibs, vanilla beans, amber syrup, and aged on honeycomb maple wood that was soaked in Vermont maple bourbon. You'll love this brew as much as Coco loves her cats and paintings. So that's going to be Cocoa Love. That's a breakfast stout. And our last one, This might be the one I'm most excited about, but don't let that sway you. Vote for whichever one you like. This is from Rising Sticks Brewing Company, and it is a double stuffed Oreo stout. And it's also an imperial stout, which means it's really effing alcoholic. This, sadly, is from the Democratic Utopia of Massachusetts. We'll try not to hold that against it. It might still be a good beer. And it says Eros instead of Oreos. We're going to, go with that one. Is an imperial stout with lactose and rich aromas of chocolate and vanilla. This variant is conditioned on even more chocolate and cream sandwich cookies for a decadent flavor. And that's going to be our double stuffed Oreo stout. So those are your choices, guys, for the poll I'm about to put in the chat. Again, we have Ruby Slippers, which is our raspberry sour ale. We have the judiciously spiced squash porter. We have Cocoa Love, which is a breakfast stout. Oop. And we have our double stuffed Oreos. And I will put this poll in the chat. There you go, guys. Let me know what you want me to drink. And in the meantime, I will set up this here video. And we will get this party started. I hope you're all having a good week. If you are drinking something fun today, please let us know in the chat what you're drinking. We do happy hours on Fridays at 5 p.m. where we watch a woke training or video from start to finish. We watch the boring bits. We watch the cringy bits. We watch the whole thing and we talk about it. And the point is to learn what the enemy is saying and to learn their perspective and to apply it to defeating them, because you cannot defeat an enemy that you do not understand. All right, the poll is pretty close. All right, I'm going to be closing the poll in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Breakfast stout it is. I'm actually surprised by that choice, if I'm honest about it, but that's cool. I think the breakfast stout sounds good because it's on nitro. Okay. What I really hope, though, I hope it doesn't explode at my desk. Okay, there's instructions. I'm supposed to shake with vigor, which frightens me. I'm going to shake gently. I'm just going to do I'm not going to shake it with vigor. Last time I shook a beer with vigor, it was not a good idea. Some of you may remember the great beer explosion on my desk of 2023. And then I'm supposed to surge pour, which means I turn it directly upside down. Okay. Please pray for me that this beer doesn't explode. Okay. Oh, no explosion. All right. Oh, we're good. Okay, hang on. Oh, that looks so good. Oh, look at that beer. Oh my God, nitro is so good. Yeah! Cheers, guys. Happy Friday. I hope you're drinking something equally as fun. I can't pour any harder, VT Num, all right? All right, guys, let's get this party started. We are watching Stacey's Not Really a Girl, featuring the gender doctor who is testifying at the California House of Representatives for the bill to ban surgery in minors. This person was obviously against the bill to ban trans surgery in minors. Let's see what they have to say.
Hello, planet Earth. Welcome, I'm Lilia, and my pronouns are she and hers, and thanks for joining us for the 10th episode of DM Maynard's reflective conversation series on gender transition for parents, partners, and educators. Today, we welcome two outstanding authors in our community, educator and author of a 3-part series of workbooks on navigating transition, DM Maynard here from New York. She's really our host today and creator of this series. So thank you so much, Dee, for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure, Lil. I'm so excited to be here today. Thank you for being so generous to me.
Why is this?
It's a pleasure. And also from the US, we have psychologist and physician, Dr. Colt Sanama, author of the children's book, Stacey's Not a Girl.
It's
And Dee will be telling us a little more about him later. So for those listening now, please have a look in the video description.
YouTube is framing this weird.
But don't forget to tell us your
screen.
comments or any pertinent questions.
Why is it doing this?
So that we can include them into the discussion today.
Hang on. What? YouTube is being weird where if I put it in full screen, it won't show you everything. So I'm going to keep it in theater mode, I think.
Welcome, Dr. Colt. Thank you
so
much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here.
So first of all, Dee, I'd like for you to tell us a little bit about your books, if possible. Do you mind filling us in on the series so that we can just give a frame for the series here?
Sure. Thank you. Well, I wrote 3 workbooks that are, their goal is to help partners of those in transition, parents of children who are in transition, but of any age. Your child's always your child, and family members to help them navigate the transition for themselves. And also, of course, teachers and support staff of trans and non-binary students. And the tagline is your schools transition as your students transition. And they're reflective workbooks to help you navigate the journey for yourself. Most of the time, and understandably so, the focus is on the person who is in transition or navigating the transition for themselves. And in this case, I found that there was a void in that there were very, very little material that a person can actually navigate the transition for themselves as they're working through their thoughts and feelings. So those are the 3 books. They're doing well. I literally just got off from training a group in Virginia, my wonderful Charlottesville cohort. They're such a beautiful school district. And we just did a training, and some of them are listening or will listen. So I'm really honored to be able to move this work forward. And as you know, we ran the partner conference in December, so a lot's going on. So, but I'm so excited to have Dr. Colt with us. Can I tell you a little bit about Dr. Colt?
Yeah, how do you know Dr. Colt, first of all?
Okay, well, a few years ago, I was excited. Everybody always kept saying to me, Dee, you have to meet Dr. Colt. I think you two will click. You'll have so much in common. And I said, well, I hope that life provides that opportunity. And I was able to present at the world, at WPATH, the World Professional Organization of Trans Health, had a conference in Argentina. And I look at a table and I see this wonderful book there. And I saw Dr. Colt's name under it. And I said, oh, that must be Dr. Colt. And I read it and I loved it because I'm a teacher first and foremost, always. And I fell in love with the book. And then when I started doing this, it was always in the back of my mind, could I get Dr. Colt to come on and talk about this book? And then we met at the conference because I wanted to meet him desperately. And I know, Dr. Colt, you use they and he, so I'm be respectful of your pronouns. I'm Dee, and my pronouns that I use is she, her, hers, in case we don't know that yet. And so we actually met in Argentina. We went tango dancing together. We're partners in many moments. I got to meet your mom and friends that you knew, and we just had the most wonderful time together and have stayed in touch ever since. So that's how we know each other. So I know you wear so many different hats, Dr. Colt. And so could you start out first, I think maybe so our audience members or our listeners get a chance to know more about your background professionally, the different types of ways that you've educated yourself in the various fields to lead you to this moment today?
Sure, absolutely. So I grew up as an only child in Southeast Texas, USA, and my mother is an OB-GYN physician, and my father is a psychologist. And so you can only imagine what our dinner table discussions were like growing up. But I love the idea of helping people, and I saw that with my parents, and so I was most drawn to psychology. And so I graduated from Rice University with undergrad, and I wanted to see if I could get a PhD in
Hang on.
clinical
Just gonna
psychology
see
in
the
order
age
to
of the video,
be,
guys.
helpful. I was coming out as queer and figuring out
About
my
a little
gender at
over a
that
year
time
old,
as well. Um,
January 19th,
and so I got
2022.
into the University of Houston, and I completed my PhD in clinical psychology with a child and family specialty focus at that time, and did research on the effects of testosterone on the mental health and well-being and sexuality of folks who took testosterone for gender transition purposes. But the more that I studied in psychology about our community and about what was known and who was talking for us, and the more I became concerned, there wasn't kind of a central voice of trans folks in healthcare related to trans people, trans bodies. And there was a lot of, unfortunately, some negative things that were written about us and about our partners as well. Even theories that they were like delusional to believe that we were really who we said we were. So there's diagnoses for partners as well as trans people. And I said, you know what? I have experienced this great education. I'm able to do research. And I think, I am obligated to my community to, get as much education as I can to take the best care of us and to really help to change the conversation so that trans people are centered as experts in our experience. And, so I went to medical school. And so I realized, the more I was in psychology and the more I was helping people with therapy and this and that, a lot of folks just really needed access to surgery, or just really needed access to hormones, or just really needed a good doctor who they could get a pelvic exam from without, having to worry about being traumatized, et cetera. So I was like, you know what? I have the privilege and the access to go ahead and go to medical school. So let me try really hard and study and do this. And so I got in, and now I'm completing my family medicine residency. I'm halfway done up here in Minnesota. And I'm just really excited to see all of the different ways that I'll be able to support our community, but especially with research and advocacy as well.
How lucky we all to have you.
Yes, truly
You
blessed.
are doing service.
Lucky and
and
blessed to have him.
all the mental health and medical health professionals now, especially, are so stretched to as far as they can stretch. I mean, you literally just got off a little while ago. You were, messaging me while you were in your car driving back saying, I'm getting there, D, I'll be there in a minute. And I mean, that you're taking the time to do this today, I cannot thank you enough. And for all those out there that are working 24/7 to make sure that we're all safe and okay, mentally, physically, emotionally, in every way, I thank you. The teachers that are out there doing that. And that's Dr. Colt's beautiful dog that is in many rooms away, but we might hear that beautiful dog sometimes, so that we're all aware of what's going on there. And so I want to thank you. And when I knew you were all heart, because when you read this book, you have to know that about you.
Yo,
It's so evident.
I'm gonna be honest. I'm pretty sure this person is a sociopath. I'm not even joking about that. Like, watching that person testify in that hearing, there is something seriously wrong with them. So to hear this woman being like, "You're all heart and you are amazing and you are going to help children." No, 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 no. I wouldn't send a kid within 500 miles of this person. That's just my opinion. You guys can do whatever you want. But I does anyone else get those vibes? Like, am I just making it up? All right, people are demanding bingo cards. Jesus Christ. All right. I don't think this is going to be a good day for bingo, but I'll get you guys a bingo card. Let's see. I think we need to do genderqueer bingo for this one. I mean, I don't think there's enough evidence to say that this person is a narcissist. I don't like throwing around that label, like, because I don't see it yet. Just because someone is an asshole doesn't mean they're a narcissist, okay? But there's something wrong with this person. Maybe it's just autism. It could just be autism. I absolutely think this person is autistic. Yes, this is the person from last night.
in every page. And how did it come about for you to say, oh, I'm going to write a children's book? Like, what led you to that decision to do that?
Sure. Like a lot of things, especially in kind of trans community and trans world, especially when I kind of first started things over 15 years ago, there was just nothing. And so a lot of us were just like, well, I wanted something, so I had to create it because nothing existed. I was really excited that there were becoming more and more gender creative type books for young people to start having some discussions, and for adults to kind of learn how to talk to kids about gender. But pretty much all of them were about pink and princesses and wanting to transition from kind of more of assigned male at birth to a more feminine or girl type gender. And there was really nothing out there for folks who were assigned female at birth and knew that they weren't a girl. And a lot of the books that were out there, regardless of which way we're talking about in the gender galaxy, were very much like, I am a this and I am a this. So my brain is this and my body is this. And it's very like, I'm very certain this is what it is. And so I wanted something that had that showed that we need to be okay with the not knowing, and to focus more on this as a developmental journey and process, and to make space for that, and also to make space for not having a for sure certain gender or a binary boy or girl only gender. And really, I think the kind of the big piece for me was this was part of my own kind of therapy for myself. I wanted to write a book that I wish that I could have read as a kid for healing for me.
You know, when I was reading it, that was exactly what came across. That I mean, Stacey knows that Stacey's not a girl, but Stacey's not sure if Stacey's a boy either. And when Stacey's misgendered,
What does
that's
it mean
something
to
that
be a
comes
girl or a
through
boy?
in one of the pages. And so, how did you come up with things? What steps did you take? Did you write the words first? Did you have an illustrator? Tell us about that process for yourself.
Sure. So one of my good friends, who's my brother now, his name is Nine, he, him pronouns, Nine, like Nine, like the number. And so I met him actually at University of Houston. He was a student in graphic design there when I was doing my PhD, and he's openly trans as well. And he connected with me through the LGBTQ Resource Center actually on campus. I'm glad that places have resource centers for queer and trans folks. That's amazing. And so they connected him with me, and he got connected with my family as well. My mom.
This person is so arrogant. Like, we've watched some head cases on in happy hour. I have never seen someone as arrogant and pompous as what this person displayed in the testimony they gave yesterday, and now it's already coming through. It's like it's just like everything is fake and inauthentic and plastic, and you can see right through it.
Is an OB-GYN, and she does a lot of trans health care. And so he wanted to talk to her as well. And we've just formed this amazing bond and really kinship. We're family now. And Nine has so many different talents and is very marketing and media and graphic design and websites and all sorts of things that I don't understand. And so I told him about the idea, and he was like, I got you. And so he actually was the one that found us an illustrator. And so I said, it's really important to me that we have as many transmasculine kind of voices represented on the project. And, if we could all be trans, that would be ideal. And he's like, I got it, no problem. And so he knew Jesse Yang, who's also openly trans out in California, cartoonist, designer as well, artist extraordinaire, and talked to him about the project while I was working on the text. So I just, thought about different stories that have happened to me, or maybe didn't happen to me directly, but I've heard plenty of people shared experiences, and then also talked to Nine and Jesse about their experiences as well. Went over the different parts of the
Oh, what
book,
the
the order of things, and we kind of, all kind of gelled together, if that makes sense. And then I also was like, okay, let me make sure this is for, very young readers. So, short sentences, short words, to the point, keep them going. And then, so 9 figured out how to kind of self-publish books, all of that sort of stuff I left to him. I think, and something that you and I have talked about is, figuring out publishing and how that works. And I think for me, it was so important that no one would edit the words that we came up with, because all the editors that I knew were cis and not of trans experience. And so I wanted just to make sure that it was ours, and that it hadn't been touched by outside community, if that made sense. And so I think in that decision, part of that's challenging, right? Because we're kind of all on our own. We're doing everything by ourselves. And so it doesn't get as well known and not as out there. Maybe if we went with a big publishing company, but I think it was really what we wanted to be, very organic and very community grassroots, if that makes sense.
Right. That's what I was, when we talk about this, I have to say that JKP, Jessica Kinsley Publishers, that I'm with, they're really allow the voice, and they really have a clear understanding of the community. But I know that that's what you're talking about at certain stages in time, especially maybe when you were considering this, doing this project, the fear of that comes up a lot. So it's really important, as you're saying, like to really investigate and navigate which direction you're going to go in, and find a publisher that aligns with what your belief systems are and allows you your voice. I mean, my publisher has, and I'm so grateful to them for that. But people do find that self-publishing is the best route for them, and whatever way it happens, I'm just happy that we got here and we have this beautiful book. I mean, I love this book. I love this book. And the illustrations are beautiful. I've seen other interviews that you've done, so I had the opportunity to see 9 being interviewed with you. And I can really see how vested you all are in the mission of this. And so I know that it sounds like you accumulated a lot of your life's experiences and that you've had in your youth, and then, created a character that can really express a lot of important points. Something I recall you saying when we were talking was that it's been translated into Spanish, and Will is in Spain, and of course we have many countries that speak Spanish, but is this correct? Is translated into Spanish now, is that correct?
Yes, it's translated into Spanish, and 9 is hard at work, kind of moving the English text and putting the Spanish text in and all the pictures, and we'll be able to have it available on Kindle, through Amazon. So that's going to be available pretty soon.
How exciting. And Lil, why don't you look over the text so that you can double check, make sure everything is correct, because she's an expert in both languages. Just putting a little plug in there for Lil.
Yes, I don't mind having a review, because of course Latin American Spanish is different from European Spanish, and I've just shared the link to the Kindle version on Amazon, because I understand that some of the hard copy versions are hard to get right now.
You can go through my website directly for the hard copy. It takes a little bit of time because we're all volunteers, but usually about once a week they do shippings for the book, the hard copy.
Right, and I got mine right in time, so I know that they are hard working. Because it's www.thegenderdoctor.com. Is that correct?
Thegenderdoctor.com.
So I know I say the www. My spouse always teases me about that, but I can't help myself. So I don't know. I shouldn't even say it. Okay. Anyway, so
well, the clickable link is in the
Oh,
chat.
thanks. Look, you just, I don't know. You just do such magic for us. I'm so excited for this. I know that you also worked on other books before we get more into this in other capacities. So I believe you edited a book with Diane Aronsaft. Is that correct?
That's right.
You want to tell us a little bit about that? Who is a person to me that I admire so much in the community. I can't even begin to tell you. One day I hope to meet her. I have not yet.
Oh, cool. Yeah, she's over in California. So yeah, Diana and I, we met several years ago through doing work with trans folks, and she's very focused on working with children. I'm more of a generalist, but again, child family specialist, like we talked about before. And there was an opportunity to work with the American Psychological Association to create a book about any kind of
They
LGBT
worked
topic
with
that
the
we wanted. And so
APA.
I
Oh, great.
worked with the members of what's called Division 44. So APA has a lot of divisions, and the LGBT division is number 44. So I worked with that
What?
particular division. They were very supportive.
I didn't know. Okay, I haven't been a member of the American Psychological Association in like a really long effing time, to be quite frank, because there was no reason for like I basically got nothing out of my membership, and so I canceled it. And but I didn't know that they had a specific LGBT division within the American Psychological Association. I was only involved in the IO psychology part of it. I wasn't looking at the rest of it. Wow.
Of my ideas. I said I want to do a book specifically on how.
So, VT Num, it's interesting that you say that because one of the projects I want to work on for like the back half of the year is I want to create a directory of activist organizations and tell you what schools they've done work in so that you can actually log on and see like Glisten, APA, SPLC, Hate Watch, like whatever. Like and not only the big ones but like the smaller ones as well. I want to create an online directory that will actually give people that information. But I need people's help in order to be able to do it. If you think that would be helpful, then go to carlin.substack.com and subscribe for $5 a month or $50 a year. I cannot do it with my current resources. I'm going to need people to, pony up and support my work. I'm not asking for a lot. $5 a month, $50 a year, and you can help me create that directory. But I really do want to do it, and I'm hopeful that people will step up and subscribe to my work and help me do it. For the APA, I don't remember, like, it wasn't that much, but it was just, like, I wasn't getting anything out of it, and so there was really there was, like, no point. I'd rather go out to a really nice dinner than than maintain a membership in the APA.
Multiple providers. So we're talking about multiple disciplines. So medicine, psychology, counseling, schools, etc. How do we come together to support young children? Because there wasn't a whole lot of guidance specifically for young children. So pre-pubertal, we're not talking about medicines at this, any kind of thing like that. How do we support young children? And so Diane and I got together and we decided to be editors. We contacted folks that we knew that had great expertise in the field, put the book together. It took a good 2 to 3 years, but got published through the APA. And we actually sold out of the hard copies. And so we're working on a second edition right now.
And I was going to point that out. That's what I wanted to say. I know you sold out for that. So I can't wait. Let us know, and when Lil and I meet next, once you know your updates, let us know, and I'll let our viewers know, our listeners. So let's get into, I have plenty of questions here, but I want to get into the book, okay? So I know you're not going to read it here today, but tell us some of the specific, well, you already talked about, I know it takes place in Texas, correct? The setting, and that is because, well, you explain why.
Sure. Yeah, so there definitely is a flavor of my experiences throughout the book. I do always like to make it clear that this isn't a story of my life or upbringing. That character Stacey is not me. However, Stacey is informed by my lived experiences, right? And so being, the whole living in a southern kind of more conservative state in the States is relevant. And so a lot of kids don't have a book that says that they live in the South, right? And so like, oh, this kid, so we did that really to create a way where there was no way, to create an experience that hadn't been there before.
Right, and there's a reference to the to Stacey going to school and speaking to a priest. It's a religious school that you it takes place part of the book, right?
Yes, that was actually from one of my experiences. And so when
Okay.
I was little, I was raised.
Hang on. King Peter in the chat says, if and when you do get that list together, Carlin, you need to have differentiation between different types of activist orgs, like APA is largely subverted. I mean, it's way more complicated than that, Peter, but but what I'm going to be focused on is activist organizations in the schools. And so I don't think there's a tremendous need to do differentiation between activist organizations. If they're working in the schools, that is what I care about, and I care about demonstrating what they're doing. And that's really it. But we'll see if people step up to the plate and fund it. If people don't step up to the plate and fund it, it'll never get done. I really do hope people do. But if they don't, then it won't, and that's just going to be the way it is.
Is Catholic, and I survived. Thank you very much. And I wanted to be a priest when I was little, but everyone told me I was a girl and girls couldn't be priests in that particular religion. And I did. I went up and asked my priest, and he was very kind. And I was just like, how. I think I'm asked my dad. I was like, Dad, I want to be a priest. And he's like, you'll have to ask that guy over there. And then he was, instead of just automatically being no, he was like, well, you can be a priest, just not in this church. And so it's one of those things where it's just like, on the one hand, it's like, he didn't totally shut me down and say you could never be a priest, which I appreciate. But at the same time, I was like, definitely, exclusion, discrimination kind of from the beginning, right? I was so young and so innocent and pure. And, I think it's just so important to recognize that these little messages like this, they stick with us. I'm 38 years old, and I was probably 6 when this happened. And so I just think it's important to show those examples. I guess the other thing to say is that my name that I was given at birth is Stacey. And so that was a choice that was made in terms of, it was hard for me to pick a different name, right? And I think the other thing is that I'm very clear that I'm not bothered when my family refers to me with my given name. Some in our community call it your dead name, and so it's terrible to be called that. And for some people, that's definitely true in their experience. But I think it's important to recognize that there's no one narrative. There's not one experience. And so I say given name instead of dead name. But yeah, so in terms of this story, I kept the name of the character, but I always try to be very clear that yes, the name and lots of experiences, but no, this Stacey is bigger than me in this book.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it's really important to ask people what you just referred to. How do I use the name that your given name? And how do you want to be referred to when we refer to you in the past, but now in the present? And you and I had these conversations, so I know what is comfortable for you. But we always, I know that sometimes the narrative is it's a never, but that's not the case. I always say, when you don't know, ask. It would be like anything else in life. When you're not sure, ask, and no assumptions. So
exactly. I guess I'd say one more thing about it, if I may, Dee.
Oh, of course.
Is that I'm only okay with my family and people who knew me before transitioning referring to me with the name Stacey, but they also have to use he or they pronouns. If they start, because a lot of times when they use the old one, they'll go to she, then that doesn't work. And then folks who knew me since I've been, 20, so for the last 18 years or so, Colt or Dr. Colt is the way to go.
Exactly.
You want your friends to refer to you as
that's
Dr.
important
Colt?
for people to know, for everyone, because again, the two things don't always align, and you cannot think that because a person is using first of all, the name Stacey, there are people, if you're going along the binary, that are named Stacey, male, female, sometimes without an E. I had a sibling by that name, and love dearly.
You can tell that the gender doctor is very uncomfortable with this. He doesn't like this.
It's really important to not only ask how to address a person's name, given or affirmed.
Hang on. I don't make anyone call me doctor. The only people that I make call me doctor are people who have pissed me off in some way, and they go, ma'am, and I go, actually, it's doctor. And they don't like that at all. But I don't make my friends and family call me doctor. That would be stupid. I don't even make my community call me doctor. Bots making up a doctor title now. It's just like you can tell. It's like this person. I mean, there is. I don't know. Is everyday therapist here? I think I saw her. I'm pretty sure. Like, this person seems to have a very, like, they need to have a very high degree of control over, like, everyone in their lives. What exactly is this disorder? Because it's extreme. We saw this in the testimony yesterday where, like, if they were questioned at all, like, it was like they had, like, an emotional outburst where it was like you could almost see them losing it, like, right in front of you, and they couldn't contain themselves. There is a very strong need to control other people around them. And we're seeing it here. Well, actually, no, no, no. If you knew me, like if you like, you have to use my pronouns and you have to use this name. It's just not going to work otherwise. And I want to be very clear about it. It was like there was no reason to say that. It contributed nothing to the value of the conversation.
But also to ask what pronoun the person uses. And sometimes a person, as
Yes,
Dr. Colt says, he
seething with
or
a
they
smile.
is fine for me.
Yes, that's a great
And
one.
to honor those things too. So the things that I in the book that were discussed were I
Bread.
want to touch on the different elements and the different the themes that are discussed in the book. And so the idea of around holidays and Halloween is discussed, and colors. Do you want to talk about that for the character?
Sure. So I think I'll talk about Halloween first. So for whatever reason, Halloween is just this time in the States specifically where you get dressed up as, and a lot of times it's anything goes. You can be whatever you want. You can be a dinosaur, you can be a ghost, you can be whatever. And with costumes and with everything, there is gender, right? There are very gendered girl costumes, boy costumes, this and that. And so I just remember that it was more okay to cross gender norms on Halloween than any other day of the year. And so I loved it. And so many, not all, but many of those costumes on there in the book were ones that I had. And so Peter Pan, and my mom was Wendy. And then I was a Ninja Turtle, and my April. Yeah, mom was April, so mom and I did a lot of kind of those things. And so, but there wasn't this like, you're a girl,
And
you
mom
can't be
had
Peter Pan.
Munchausen's by
Even though, because I think
proxy
my mom was like, well, the actor in the movie was a girl, and
and
so it
a
works fine,
strange
right? And so
relationship
I
with her
think my parents were just
child where
excited that I
she's
was
dressing up in
androgynous,
Halloween
because there was a lot of
costume.
research back then by Sarah Drabim that was like androgyny and self-esteem are correlated, and like all these, and intelligence. And so they're like, oh, let's encourage this. And so yeah, I think especially as adults, we see that more also. Sometimes adults will share the first time that they kind of presented closer to their true expression of self was on Halloween, and they could use it as, oh, I'm just wearing a costume, in terms of for psychological safety or physical safety, if that makes sense. So kind of using it as a strategy. Then colors, of course, colors are very gendered. And so I wanted to make sure that the kids said that they liked
Why
blue
are
and
colors
red and
gendered?
green. I think, those colors, because I remember like lots of different
Why?
conversations in childhood of people, you can't like that, or you can't like that because it's this. And so I wanted to invite those conversations for folks and teachers and different folks reading the books. Holidays, Halloween, and colors. There you go.
Right, that's it. You covered it. And I do think, there are certain cultures and religions that don't celebrate Halloween,
Right.
But the idea is that because you do talk a lot about it within the book. I mean, I know something that consciously talked about was wanting to make sure that this was across all cultures and all religions, and that people could have a conversation about religion, as we just touched on, and about various cultures, and that the characters were represented from all different cultures and different nationalities. Do you explain the thinking behind that?
Sure. Most of the books that were previously out there, we had light-skinned kids, and we're very kind of majority, if you will, very accessible to a majority. And we wanted this book to be accessible to anyone, and so we wanted to have a lot of intersecting identities in Stacey. And so that's also a big piece, right? That I am white, and so having Stacey be brown with a brown parent as well was an important part of that book, because Where are all the stories for the biracial kiddos? Where are all the stories, for the multiracial families? And so having Nine and Jesse, who are both brown people or Asian folks, people of color, whatever terms that folks use, and they will use people of color and Asian, that really was important to me in informing this decision as somebody who considers themselves a white ally and learning.
But you're two-spirit, so
And it's
aren't you
interesting
Native
because the
American, or are you
most people who've
appropriating their
given us really
culture?
high praise
gives
and
you virtue
compliments and
points.
comments from this book, they actually point out the brownness
Because you're not supposed to use
of the
two-spirit
book
unless you're Native
more
American.
than gender. So that for me, it was a risk, to be quite honest, in making that choice, especially as a white person trying to figure out how to be supportive in this world and, and make someone be able to see themselves. But I think that just feedback from so many people being like, that was so meaningful to me, really makes me think, okay, that was the right choice.
But and I also think about talking about, Catholicism and have, and talking about, the character of the priest also gives way for us to be able to open conversations with parents and or students about religion or different ways to navigate that also, or medical and mental health professionals when they're working, and to be very sensitive to people's beliefs and without harming the person who is identifying on the transgender spectrum, and in fact, Colt, if I have this wrong, Dr. Colt, I think in your description, you identify also as two-spirit. Would you want to expand on that at all?
Explain
Sure.
that.
So,
because I feel that we don't always I don't always have an opportunity to discuss this.
Sure. So I just came into my two-spiritness in terms of identity within the last couple of years. It's one of my newer gender identities. And I think it's really important to kind of make that clear that a lot of times folks want you to know what your gender is, and then you can only transition if you're really sure and you know exactly what it is. But I will tell you what, I started testosterone over 15 years ago, and my gender has made multiple different iterations since then, and it was still the right choice, and it was still the right thing to do. And so that kind of one of my pieces when talking about new identities is just making sure that folks are clear that it wasn't a mistake, I wasn't wrong in what my identities were before, if that makes sense, because that's what they were at that time, and we're always unfolding and developing, and if we have space to do so. And so one of my really good friends and teachers or mentors, their name is Kelly Blair. They're in Oklahoma. They belong to 3 different Native tribes in terms of their heritage.
If you explain what two-spirit is, so those that are listening may not know also somewhere in this. I know
I'm getting there, Dee. I'm getting there.
I'm sure. I realize you're probably going to get there.
Okay. You say land the plane. Okay, I'm coming. So
okay,
Kelly is important.
No, take your time. Take your time.
Because
I love
Kelly is the one that taught me what two-spirit is. And so they are Native, they use they, them pronouns, and they're also trans and two-spirit themselves. And so when I was talking to them about my experience of gender as being, I definitely feel that I'm both binary and non-binary at the same time. So 1 foot in binary, 1 foot in non-binary. And that's something that most people don't understand and doesn't make sense in frameworks.
You cannot be binary and non-binary at the same time. That is not a real thing. I'm sorry. You need to choose one. It makes no sense. You cannot be both on the binary and also separate from the binary. You are a doctor. You are a doctor working with children. This is basic. Either you are on the binary and subscribe to one of the 2 genders, or you are not on the binary. You cannot have both.
Because, well, you're either or, but I'm like, but that's just another binary. Like that doesn't make sense.
And you're non-binary, bro.
I don't identify so much into the binary that I want to be seen as a cisgender man, right? And so that's why I don't want to.
You're not a cisgender man.
Piece, because my gender does all sorts of different cool things. And they were like, that is incredibly like.
He has a special gender that does all sorts of cool things. What does that even mean? What does gender do? What does your gender do that is so very special and does all sorts of cool special things that other people's gender doesn't do. He is a double negative. It's true. Still hasn't said he's Native American yet, which, by the way, you do need to be Native American to claim Two-Spirit. It is a very specific indigenous term. If you are not indigenous, you are not Two-Spirit. Based on their own definitions. I'm not making this up. I didn't create this. Based on their definitions. This is why he learned it from a Native American.
Two-spirit kind of thinking, right? So that kind of sacredness of wisdom, of holding two things that people didn't think could make sense together and being like, this is truth. And so they said, you know, do you have any Native heritage? Because this, like,
No.
that sounds like it's coming from that, and spirit just in general, I feel, when we're having our conversations with you. And so I asked my parents, because I remember
The
like a
male
long time
Elizabeth
ago, my mom
Warren.
had talked about somebody,
Exactly.
you know, but we've never
Exactly.
really kind of talked
It's
much
like,
more about it.
this
And
person is
so
like
apparently I have like a
164th.
great grandmother that was
It is!
Cherokee. And so
This person is quite literally Elizabeth Warren. This is the Elizabeth Warren of trans people. A great-great-great-grandparent that was a quarter Cherokee? Are you kidding me, bro? You are not Two-Spirit.
Kelly said, well, since you have heritage and you're talking in the way that's very clearly kind of Native, in my understanding, you are Two-Spirit. And I was like, oh, okay. I guess I'm Two-Spirit. Again, there's a pause, right, that I take, because as somebody who's very
you're
much
not
white
Native
identified, I
American?
don't identify as indigenous, even though that is part of me. But because
He just said, I don't identify as indigenous. If you don't identify as indigenous based on your own definitions, you are not Two-Spirit.
my title or label came from a Two-Spirit person, that is how I was able to claim it. And so it means that I am learning what's called Two-Spirit medicine. So different ways of healing, thought processes, history, storytelling of Native folks that have been passed down through generations is something that I'm privileged to learn as a Two-Spirit person.
This person has fully appropriated a Native American identity when they have never had any connection to Native American culture. I have had more connection to Native American culture than this person. This is one of the most fraudulent things I've ever heard of in my life. Doesn't identify as indigenous or Native American, has like 1/64th like drop of blood from a great grandmother who was like a quarter Cherokee, and is now appropriating Native American culture because it's another victim label that they can attach to themselves so they seem more oppressed and worldly than they actually are. No connection to the culture at all. He is indigenous by proxy. Indeed, indigenous by proxy.
Wow. So, I mean, you're really
So
bringing
stunning and brave.
different cultural background information and putting it into your practice, and really making sure that people are aware of ways to
This woman's
identify,
trying
and
so
you can
hard.
find that information about
She's
yourself at
trying
any
to be
stage
nice
of
so
your life,
hard.
and the way you landed the plane, the way you got it there. It's beautiful. And I think the more eclectic and holistic people are in understanding all different cultures and bringing all different types of medicine together really makes the best clinician, you know. And I'm grateful that you're willing to take those chances and learn something. I mean, if we're always growing, right? I mean, that's one thing about you. You're always growing as an intellectual way, academic, in every way. That's what I know of you.
Yeah, and I love that you asked me about Two-Spirit, because one of my kind of thinking about what's the next book look like for Stacey, and I think part of it may be discovering that part of
Oh
their identity and having
my
maybe some good family
God.
with that. And so, Kelly, I've talked to them a little bit before this, but I'm going to ask them to help me to put that together. So I think that will.
They're going to write a book about discovering their Two-Spirit identity, which isn't even real. You've appropriated it.
Be a nice kind of iteration for next steps for Stacey.
This person is working with children.
I think that that's the right way to go. I totally support this, and I can't wait to read it and interview you about this when that comes.
Working
I cannot wait.
with
So
children.
talking about like other parts of the book, then
Jesus Christ.
I did touch on it a moment before about misgendering, and I know I have.
Oh, I'm gonna clip it.
When I
Don't
do
you worry.
trainings, we talk about misgendering and how do you handle if you misgender someone, and how does that person feel? And in as earlier was stating about how in this book, Stacey is not as pained as some people may be, or maybe on certain levels. So discuss that with me.
Hey, I just want to do a quick pause. I want to acknowledge and thank Sith over on Rumble. I'm trying to get better about checking in with my Rumble chat every now and again. I don't get that many watchers on Rumble, but if you do want to watch me on Rumble, I would encourage you to subscribe. I know like people in Rumble would really like the chat to be a little bit more inviting. We do have a couple people. We have like 23 people watching right now on Rumble, so thank you guys. And I do want to say Sith commented that they picked up a hardcover copy of my book, Actively Unwoke, The Ultimate Guide for Fighting Back Against the Woke Insanity in Your Life. I want to thank you, Sith, for that. And I want to, if anyone else wants a copy of the book, you can get it at activelyunwoke.com. It's also available on Amazon and all like the typical places. It's on Kindle. It's on audio. I read it myself on audio. And of course, the hardcover version is a thing. And so if you want a copy of the book, that is available. And Sith, I really do appreciate you picking up a copy. Thank you so much. Guys, we are watching Happy Hour. We do Happy Hour at 5 p.m. on Fridays. Please mount that like button on whatever platform you are watching on. And if you are on YouTube today, then I would encourage you, just make sure you're subscribed on like a couple other platforms. I'm on Odyssey, I'm on Rockfin, I'm on Rumble. And I hope we can boost those numbers up and make the chat a little bit more invigorating on Rumble. All right, let's get back to it.
A little bit.
Sure.
And based, I mean, a lot of it also was on maybe physical presentation, gender expression with the shorter hair, and well, you expand on it more.
Sure. So for those of y'all who don't know what misgendering is, that's when folks refer to you in a way that doesn't feel right, that's somehow related to gender. And so it can be, we usually talk a lot about like names and pronouns.
Is that a thing?
But there's also relational terms. So like sister, girlfriend, father, right? There for whatever reason.
Nephew and
right?
niece.
There's so many relational terms. And there's also terms of endearment, sweetie, champ, and in different languages and different cultures, you have them too. And then nicknames as well. So there's a lot of ways that we refer to each other. Hey,
Thank
girl,
you guys.
That are gendered, even if we're not talking about gender or not even referring or, not even thinking about their gender. It's just really, pervasive. And so Stacey was really clear that misgendering for them was referring to them as a girl. And so they could be called Stacey without being referred to as a girl. So that name was fine at that particular time in the book, which may or may not change. Stay tuned. And then they were not sure if they wanted to do he or they or anything like that. So I didn't even put that in. I kind of left that for the imagination and to open up possibilities for discussions. What do you think Stacey's pronouns are going to be? I don't know. Only Stacey knows. Those sorts of things.
Like if we make reference to Stacey with the word tomboy connected, they use that in there too. So I'm glad that you're exploring this with me now.
Yeah, no problem. I don't think we used a pronoun for Stacey in the book.
Not that I noticed.
Actually, we did that on purpose, also to show that you can not use pronouns and not even notice. So yeah, but I think your point, Dee, is really important, that different people are very clear on what is misgendering for them. And it's important to listen. And also it's important to roll with things, because like we talked about, things develop over time. And the more people get to do what I call the trying on of new things, the more you get to try on, the more you know what fits you and what doesn't. And so I encourage folks who are kind of accompanying folks kind of adjacent to their journey and with them to kind of roll with it. And so instead of being very like, well, you told me it was only going to be this, and so now I'm calling you this, you want to change it again? And I'm like, well, yes, and that's a good thing. And you know, we get so stuck, and the certainty and those pieces do not help us to flourish and to facilitate growth and development. And so I always say like, ooh, good, they found out that one didn't work for them, so we're gonna keep trying. Well, I don't want to mess up. I don't want to mess up. You are gonna mess up. We all mess up. We're humans. When we have a moving target, something moving around, you're not gonna hit it every time, and that's okay, right? So just making space for folks to do that journey together when it comes to gendering them correctly.
I'm so glad you touched on that, because I mean, I was training teachers today and they were talking about, oh, what do I do? And I include that a lot in the books. And parents, they feel awful often. And then there are partners, of course, whether even when they're intimate or not intimate, you know, these things happen at moments when you're fighting with someone, and there's different moments that this happens. And that I always say that if it's not done with being malicious, you're not doing it to be cruel, it's actually a mistake and an error. I've never met anyone, I have not, that doesn't understand and says, you know, it's a teachable moment and we're all learning. It's a learning curve. And
exactly.
Yes, and so therefore, I think that in the book, it really shows it in such a, with such grace about how you address this in the book.
Oh,
and
thank you.
You're welcome. There's so many things in here about the idea that the part that I noticed the most pain is the rejection by friends and maybe family, because that's touched upon in here. And, you know, not being invited, feeling badly about themselves. So explain the feelings that you intended to explore here.
Absolutely. I'm going to touch on one thing quickly about the misgendering, because it's such an important topic. And so it requires humility to realize that we're getting things wrong, right? And to try again. But my pro tip is this: as you're, you know, people are like, I'm really trying, and the kids are like, no, they're not, or, you know, whatever it is. I say, every time you hear yourself do it wrong or misgender, even if it's like a few seconds later or whatnot, correct yourself. And so she, and then continue, or whatever it is, because cognitively, and just thinking about psychology and learning, if you keep practicing it wrong, you're more likely to keep getting it wrong. So when you realize, even if you're like, oh, I think 3 sentences ago I probably said the wrong one, let me repeat it, and make yourself repeat it, like repeatedly over and over again, because the more associations, right, those things get in the brain, the faster you're going to retrieve that in the future. And so that's a tip that I give all my parents when they're kind of struggling with misgendering. I say, just keep repeating yourself, correcting it. It may sound weird, but don't just let it go. So that's misgendering. I
agree with you more, because I mean, I have a very close friend, and their close friend uses they, them, their pronouns. And whenever they're making reference to them, you know, the teacher in me comes out, of course, and I say, oh, is that what they said? And they're like, oh, thank you, thank you. And I feel that when you made reference before to, you promised you weren't going to, you know, this is what you told me. A lot of times parents and partners and educators, friends say it's because they want to get it right, and they've put so much energy into learning it, and then they're unlearning and relearning. And I always say the reason why this is happening is because a person is trying to understand themselves, and so they need that space, that fluidity, that acceptance, and that there are many things about every one of us that we're uncertain about, and everybody is patient with us. You know, I'm a cisgender person, so that's why I'm saying us, you know. But, you know, there are also people, I mean, I want to correct myself here. That there are plenty of people who are trans themselves that have to get used to their friends name adjustment and everything. I mean, this is a challenge for everyone at different times.
Yeah. And then once you got it, you've got it, and you can do it more with other people. It took my parents about 5 years of honestly trying to get it 100% right. And so I always kind of encourage like that. And also I encourage patience with our community, as long as, like you said, Dee, like that person is not causing you like negative intentions or malintent. That person's not trying to be malicious. If they are, that's a whole nother issue, right? But if you can tell they're really trying, just have some grace, have some patience for them.
I think also to help you remember sometimes, I know like at certain conferences, which we're going to get into conferences later, people have name tags, right? And they have your name and to put your pronoun underneath that. I mean, you know that, of course, Dr. Cole. But also as a teacher, to put that under a child's name in lesson plans, in sub-plans, so that, you know, when you sign in, so that if things are fluid or evolving, that we can, it's an easier visual, because to just hear it and just to say it, which I agree with you, to say it over, sometimes people are visual learners. So those are also tools that we can do to be, make it a lot easier to learn. So if we can possibly address now, I was talking before about, I can't believe I'm the person who's remembering this. It's hysterical to me. But about the being, you know, I'm making a joke, but it's not about being rejected and feeling not included. You know,
sure,
it's painful.
Absolutely. I wanted to make sure that we had some space in the book for the realities of trans folks, and even some of our kids that have a very charmed experience. And mine, I would consider very charmed. My family was accepting. I didn't get kicked out of my church or school, or you know, I had very positive experiences. But there were also dark
Bob found his
moments and dark
Instagram.
times, and so I wanted to make sure that we would address that in the book. And so in the book, Stacey is not invited
Instagram
to
on
a
his
birthday
website didn't have any content. This
specifically
one
because
does.
of their difference in terms of their gender. And they're heartbroken about that, as any kid who wouldn't get invited to their friend's party would be, right? And that is deep and visceral, and unfortunately for many youth and even adults leads to kind of an internalized transphobia. We internalize somebody else's transphobia ourselves. And then because we said, well, if I wasn't trans, then I could have a friend or I could be invited.
Internalized
So I don't want to be
transphobia,
trans,
seriously?
because we associate the transness with the discrimination instead of realizing the goodness about being trans, because other people didn't realize the goodness. And so for kids to kind of see that that happens, and then for the parents to get an idea of how parents respond to that. And then also the very best friend, Josefina, kind of who jumps in and is like, I'm always going to be your friend. And parents who are like, those parents, they just don't understand. And if they understood, they wouldn't be so afraid, because there's nothing wrong with you. You know, so we wanted to make sure that it was clear to show kind of the envelopment with love and support from multiple characters, so parents as well as good friends, when that rejection did happen. We also know that experiences of rejection and also misgendering, kind of more of a, from the health perspective, are correlated with suicidal ideation, depression, and anxiety, and really PTSD is what I'm seeing.
Great
more
job,
and more
Lady
of as
Feline.
adults.
Bingo, bingo.
And so I'm so glad we're doing more of this work kind of early with the young people as they're figuring out gender, because I do think it will be saving lives.
That everything I do, the whole goal is to save a child's life and to have them feel accepted and loved. And you handle that beautifully in the book about, you know, how the parents really were unsure when Stacey talked to them what to do next. And I just also, you know, you talked about the other character that I love so much, Josefina, is that correct? Am I saying that correctly? And how, you know, the parents and Josefina helps with the resilience of that child, to give them support and to have different ways that they can have coping mechanisms when they're rejected in certain ways, you know, or bullied. Of course, you touch on that in the book. And one thing I ask parents all the time when they used to have parties, I discuss it in my books too, is, you know, why does the guest list have to be gendered? Like, why do we have to have a boy boy guests and male guests. Like, we just have a party and invite your child, ask your child, who are their friends? Rather than, can I have the list of all the boys or all the girls? Because as we have evolved, we understand that really when you have a party, you want to invite the people you're friends with. And your child may have children that are all genders. And so to be inclusive of that. And so it's really a great way to start a conversation in a classroom, looking at it through the lens of a teacher, that part of the book. One other thing, so your parents go to see the doctor that they learn about through a conference. If I have that, is that correct?
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and then you talk about the different types of words that you use, gender smooth, I don't know if you're, you wrote this a bit ago. I'm sure you're familiar with the 4 main terms you use, but if you need me to pull it up or help you, I got it going here on here. Could you talk about those different terms? And I know that they're just to help
Sure.
understand better.
Yeah, if y'all could pull it up on the screen, that would be super helpful. So part of the work that Dr. Diane Aronstaff does with young people and the writing that she does is she has shared with us the different ways that young people have come in and talked about their gender with her that didn't necessarily fit the I'm just a boy or I'm just a girl.
I'm sorry, I just want to say it's on page 19 and 20 in the book. So I know you have the PDF there, but in case you want to look here, it'll
Nice.
help.
So there's the gender smoothie on page 19.
The gender
mixture
smoothie?
of boy and girl. So like a smoothie, right? Mixture of different parts.
The gender
right? And then the
smoothie.
next one, gender Prius, right? So hybrid, if you will, half boy, half girl. Gender Minotaur, one gender on the top, another gender on the bottom.
What?
And then gender Tootsie Roll Pop, one gender on the outside and another on the inside. And so these are ways that young people are kind of using different analogies.
My God. I think I need to buy this person's book. I think I need to write about this person's book. The gender Tootsie Pop? The gender Minotaur? Let's rewind and let's just experience that moment again. I especially liked how she was holding up the book. Let's just experience that fresh hell again.
Just to help understand better.
Yeah, if y'all could pull it up on the screen, that would be super helpful. So part of the work that Dr. Diane Aronstaff does with young people and the writing that she does is she has shared with us the different ways that young people have come in and talked about their gender with her that didn't necessarily fit the I'm just a boy or I'm just a girl.
I'm sorry, I just want to say it's on page 19 and 20 in the book. So I know you have the PDF there, but in case you want to look here, it'll help.
So there's the gender smoothie on page 19.
Gender
mixture
smoothie.
of boy and
buying
girl. So like a smoothie, right? Mixture of different parts.
Got it.
Right? And then the next one, gender Prius, right? So hybrid, if you will, half boy, half girl. Gender Minotaur, one gender on the top, another gender on the bottom, and then gender Tootsie Roll Pop, one gender on the outside and another on the inside. And so these are ways that young people are kind of using different analogies to explain their experience of gender.
I did see it in Lecture
I think
Aquino.
it's
I did.
incredibly an accessible way, and it comes from the mouths of children themselves. And so I did, of course, get her permission.
Yes. I am absolutely positive that out of the mouths of children came the term gender minotaur. Let me just ask you that, guys, this. I learned about mythology and things like minotaurs probably starting in middle school, and that was only because my grandmother used to read me all of the like Hercules myths and all that stuff. And so I probably started learning about it. Like if you're in elementary school and you're learning about mythology, you're learning about like the high level stuff like Zeus and Hercules and all that stuff. But like you start to get into minotaurs a little bit later. Maybe more like high school, right? What am I wrong to say that there is no, like, and I'm talking like child, like I'm talking like elementary school age, because this book is directed at like elementary school age children. I'm not talking about teenagers. I'm not talking about later. Okay. I'm not even talking about middle school, elementary school. What do you think the chances are in this universe that this person read or this person heard from an elementary school age child that they are a gender minotaur? I don't think that's very likely. Oh, bot. What a good find. Good idea. Sin, you were advanced. All right. Even Kurt is saying there is no fresh chance in hell that this person heard the phrase gender minotaur from a child. Did not happen. No. Denied.
To put those in the book, and I don't think anyone
What
had
is
ever
wrong
drawn
with these
pictures of them
people?
before. So we had so much fun with Jesse kind of coming up with, how do you draw that? I don't know. And really, honestly, they could look like whatever, right? And still have those genders. But we wanted to kind of play with that a little bit in the book.
Right. And so I love that you gave I mean, whether they're a
Fucking
child
gender
might
minotaur.
describe it, because, you know, being an early childhood specialist, children don't always know exactly. They might have that vocabulary, of course, but they'll describe it in the best words or they might draw it, and you would want to explore. And you don't have to say to a child, oh, well, you're a gender smoothie. I mean, that's not the purpose of this. The purpose is to show, is if I'm wrong, please correct me, because it's your intent with how you were writing this, is that it's to have a conversation and to understand that there's various ways to express gender and various ways to experience yourself. And it's to give a child more vocabulary, more understanding, and others to, you know, have a better way to understand themselves.
Yeah, because most of us grow up with very restrictive ideas about gender. And so this is the idea that there are infinite possibilities of gender, and to give some examples that people may have never thought about or heard about before. And so really it's just to kind of address that restrictive nature and kind of open it up to possibilities.
Right. And one of the aspects that was discussed about is Stacey wasn't comfortable with certain part of their body, and that they wanted to, you know, maybe have surgery or consider that, or, and then the doctor explained to them that sometimes at certain times in your life, you may want to address this with medicine and medical ways. Do you know what I'm referring to?
Yes. And so surgery wasn't brought up at all in the book, because I think it's a really controversial subject in general. And I was like, we're going to talk about that. We need another like 3 volumes going on here. But Stacey was very clear that the idea of growing breasts was very distressing to them. And so we brought in an element of physical gender dysphoria within this particular book. Sometimes kids will be very internal about that and not share that with their parents. And then when it's really too late, or just kind of on time that they really need to have an intervention, the parents are like, this is the first time I've heard about that. You know, you've never said anything to me before, but this person has been suffering for so long. And it's so important to let young people know about medical options. I think some people are worried, well, if we let them know the options, are going to be more likely to choose them. And it's like, that's not how it works. They need to know, you know, so they can tell you how they're feeling in their body. And so this kid was
more, if I'm incorrect, tell me, because you're the doctor, right? We're talking more about hormones and, you know, Tanner stages. And
you're always reading my mind. Hold on, I'll get there, Dee.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I have to be in control of the conversation,
you know,
Dee. You don't get to moderate. I'm in control here.
They don't have any breast growth whatsoever. And so for those young people, if it's medically indicated for medical treatment, whenever they're about to start puberty, or they just barely begun puberty, no periods yet in this particular kiddo, no breast growth yet, they can time the suppression of puberty And then if they do decide to do a masculizing exogenous puberty, they can time it so that the person will never grow breasts and will never even need surgery. And so it's just really important that that young person knows that that's a possible route. They may or may not choose the route, but they need to know it's possible.
So this is interesting because this person testified in the Texas House of Representatives that it is extremely rare to do this sort of thing. Exactly what they're describing now and putting kids on puberty blockers, like when they're really young. This person literally testified in the Texas House of Representatives that this sort of thing doesn't really happen. And if it does, it's extremely rare and not really something that's even worth talking about because it's so rare that it's not even worth discussing. But they seem, when they're talking to people who agree with them, to be pretty openly stating that it's a really good idea and that we should do it. This is why we watch Happy Hour, because when they are talking to people who they think agree with them and they believe that no one who ever disagrees with them is going to watch what they're saying, they say the quiet part out loud and they do things like admit they were lying when they testified in front of the Texas House of Representatives.
They don't have to worry so much about any day now. They're just going to show up and I'm.
Oh, by the way, I need to do a shout out to Mary O'Brien over on Rockfin for the $5 tip. Mary, I apologize for not shouting you out sooner. I did see it come in and then I talked about something else and I forgot. But Mary on Rockfin says that girl doctor must be taking massive doses of male hormones to grow a beard. Maybe she's not an MD, doctor of education. No, this person is an MD, Mary. This person is an MD. This person is a PhD in psychology and an MD. And yeah, they're probably taking massive amounts of hormones and have been for a really long time. But I do appreciate the super chat. Thank you for supporting the work I'm doing.
I'm going to have these things that I don't want.
Right. So, I mean, and just to be also, there's standards of care for any of the things we're talking about, WPATH puts out, and there's lots of different, I mean, this is a very complex topic. So, and again, you just touched on it for a moment in the book because of its complexity. And again, you were just referring more to people who are assigned female at birth.
Right.
And so so I'm going to go on to some other things that were touched in the book. Was really was the role of the parents, and then going to the conference. And I mean, we met at a conference, but I do want to talk about the role of parents and then get into a further discussion about the conference.
Sure. I think conferences and bringing people together are so critical for our community. I think the pandemic has made that really obvious to me, and it's been a big challenge because when we come together, there is healing. There's just so much shared experience. There's so much like, oh, I got it. Yeah, I totally, like, you don't even have to spend 5 minutes explaining what you just said to me because I know what you're talking about, right? There's so many of those kind of clicking type moments and those connections and community building that happen at conferences. And so I wanted to give an example of a conference. So people will be like, oh, are there conferences for this kind of thing? And then look those up. Because yes, there are, and that's how so many people learn so much and get access to so many resources. It's like a treasure trove of people and access, and so that's why I wanted to make sure I had the conferences in the book.
Right, and I mean, I met Lil through a conference. I met youth at a conference. I got my opportunity to be a writer through conferences and meet up with other professionals. As an whether there's all around the US and in other countries. And so I think it's very important that, and sometimes they're free, sometimes they cost something. And so there's something for everyone. I'll call that a little smoothie. There's a little smoothie for, in the nicest of ways, a mixture of different ways and options for people. And one of the most important things, I mean, when you talk about suicide and things, is to have some adults support children in their gender journey. And, in this case, you really showed the parents in such a beautiful light. I'm not saying that it was based on your life, but I know that you just mentioned your parents were very supportive, and in this case, it was so beautiful. And
Yes,
so
you
you want to
can.
expand a little bit about the intention of the parents being so supportive.
Absolutely. I wanted to show that it was possible, especially with folks from diverse backgrounds, to be supportive and accepting, because they are, but that's not generally what we hear, right? I think it's also important that parents do have their own journey and their own process, and they're human. And it's really important for them to get support. Whenever I'm working with folks, I'm usually recommending counseling for parents more than I am for young people, because people have such a hard time. And so they need to be around other folks who have been there, who, can understand the pain or the different experiences that they're having and the confusion, et cetera. It's usually more in the parents, in my experience, than in the young people. And so I think it's important, though, that I communicate that parents need to have their own stuff, but they need to not put it on their child. Because I know for a fact that my parents had their own journey with this, but they didn't put it on me. Like, this is so hard for me. Why are you making it? I don't know how they felt or whatnot, but they were adults and they did their own processing separately from me, so that then when it comes with my relationship with them, they could show up in the way that I needed. And so I wanted to kind of parallel that with these parents.
Right. So what we can know is with the conferences, based on what you just said about feeling the way that they do, is there's a sense of community, because when you go to a conference, it's not there. Some are for professionals, but there are ones that are parents can meet up and talk, and their children can play and go to and just be, not I identify as this, I identify as that, just be. They can swim with the attire that they need. They can wear the clothing that aligns with their gender. It's such a place of acceptance. There are camps that have this also for children. And for those that don't know, it's mentioned throughout my education book. And
Thank you,
for
Bot.
parents. And whatever, it doesn't matter about my book. And so then, no, I just want people to know that this is available out there. You know what I mean? And,
yes, it's important.
We're
and
live
that
streaming this
when
shit.
you go to these conferences, there are also places for partners to meet up and talk, and that there's places like Facial Team presents at the different conferences, and little associated with, and you really get a lot of information. It's cathartic. It's joyful. It can be a lot. And that's the thing I want to say about conferences. It can be very overwhelming.
Yeah.
And one of the things that can be hard for children, so I want to make parents aware that are listening, or educators, is that when you have this freedom to just be, and then you have to retreat again sometimes, it's very emotionally challenging. And that if a child is working with a mental health professional or is with a parent, to anticipate that could happen, because they've been using maybe the pronoun that is affirming and being referred to exactly how they are, but others are not knowing this about them yet, and that they may have to go back to what was before they went to the conference, and to have these important conversations about this before you go to a conference and how you're going to handle it. And that I know one parent, they took clothes of many genders and put them in the suitcase and allowed their child to choose what they wanted to on that particular moment in time. So that's the thing about conferences. It's not just, there are ones that are just for mental health professionals. So the parents in this case they were supportive, but they needed help themselves, and that it's okay for the parent to say, I love you just as you are, but I need a little help. And
and it really shows that humility that we're talking about, that is so critical in these relationships and taking good care of each other, is for parents to be like, I know that I love you. Like, you're my grounded truths. You are my child. I love you. Period. Full stop. And this is not something that I know very much about. And I'm going to learn. And I'm going to talk to people who know about this stuff, right? And so it instills that hope in the child, but it also conveys that humility.
Right, and the languaging around it, the vocabulary. Parents are getting used to it's a foreign language, a whole new language, and they need space, not just with pronouns, but to understand what gender dysphoria is, and to understand what different types of things are. What does genderqueer mean, right? We talk about that, and what are the differences? And again, if a person doesn't know, it's okay to ask a person what that is. It's a teachable moment, and that's what it comes down to. Lil, do we have any questions or comments before I go to the next part? Because we are at an hour, and I can go forever with Dr. Colt. I mean, this has just been such a fluid way to have a conversation. I just love talking to you.
Yeah, we can keep going if you like. I don't know if you have places to go, people to meet, things to do.
Are there any questions that people have asked, or
we do not have any questions at the moment. We have
okay, so I'm going to wrap this up, because I know that both of us, Dr. Colton and I, have something coming up in a few minutes. So let's just I just want to ask you, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Oh God.
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. I'm thinking a lot right now about career and where do I want to go. And I'm leaning
going to
towards
get
returning
another
to
graduate
Texas
degree.
to practice.
Oh,
I
returning
think
to
that's
Texas.
a challenge right now, especially in the political climate, and working different states,
Really?
working to make it a crime to take care of trans people, especially young people
Really?
or people under 18. And so, thinking about that
explains
makes
a
me
lot.
hesitate. And at the same time, like, people are there and they need care. And I'm a Texan that's born and raised, lived there all my life, except the last 2 years now. So I'm thinking about going and practicing in Texas, likely in the Houston area. I'm hoping that I'll be affiliated with an academic institution to be continuing the research that I like to do, as well as teaching in medical school and counseling and psychology and social work grad programs, hoping to teach how to do really good counseling work with the population.
And the state of Texas
doing my
has
own
completely
counseling
foiled
with
their
the population
plans.
and having a medical clinic. So that's kind of a both and, like a mind, body, spirit kind of wellness type of a place. My ideal goal would be to have it deinstitutionalized, and so to have it feel more like a home than a sterile clinic, if you will. And so that's the hope, is to be doing research, teaching, and clinical practice. And then, of course, hopefully informing different guidelines.
Because they're very
as we
narcissistic.
center more trans voices, right, in guideline creation for.
Although, to be fair, I mean, this is an interview. It is kind of about them. Like if you're not talking about yourself in an interview, like, that's a time when you're supposed to talk about yourself, to be honest.
Standards of care.
Well, you also mentioned to me, I don't know if this is you have time for this, about some videos you're doing or some type of work you're doing, your next project. If you want to hold off for the next interview for that, we can do it then.
I can leave y'all with that, and I do have to go. So a company that I own, and Nine, of course, is my partner on that. And it's called The Gender U. So the gender and letter U.
He owns the
.com.
Gender U.
And what that is
That
it's
makes more
specifically
sense, doesn't
for
it?
folks who are trans, non-binary, intersex, or what I call adjacent to. And so that's partner of, family member of, significant other. We used to call it SOFAs. I mean, we got all sorts of different words, right? For people whose lives are directly impacted by trans folks, but they're not trans themselves. So
Which
adjacent
is what
folks.
my books are all about. That's
exactly.
You get it. I know you get it.
Adjacent folks and trans folks have the mic and have the platform to do the education. And I used my privileges as an MD and a PhD to get CE credits for physicians and mental health providers for this. We have 4 courses right now, and
it's a giant scam. That Gender U thing, it's a giant fucking scam. It's his company that he has set up to create these online courses to be able to offer continuing, like, ed credit because of the degrees. It's a giant fucking grift. Wow, I'm definitely not paying them $350 now.
we are going to be having more and more courses over time. And so
that's
the hope, right, is to
absolutely
eventually
not
even have
going
some
to happen.
certifications, if you will, for different types of providers, maybe even teachers if we get, really enough, if we get enough. so that, this idea is that trans health was centered around cis people who created it. And they've made all these different things, which are nice, but part of the work that I do in the world is to center up and elevate trans people in doing the work. And so we're making sure that their voices are the ones that teach others how to take care of us, instead of different communities saying, this is how I take care of this community over here. We say, no, we have lived expertise in addition to professional expertise. So I'm working on centering what I call both ands, right? Both professional and personal expertise to do the teaching work. And so it's thegenderyou.com.
Is there anything I haven't asked you that you would want to say?
You're the bestie. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And Lilia, thank you for coordinating everything today. I think if there's one thing I would say is, like, it's really clear when people have a passion, right? So people can't argue that I don't have a passion for this work in this area. I've gone to school my whole life just to try to take care of our population. And so I want to just encourage folks to figure out what your passions are and to pursue those. And thanks again for having me.
What a gift you are to the community and to everyone, really. I thank you for your time. I know our next taping is going to be on February 16th, and that'll be back at 10 a.m. We have wonderful guests. It's all set up, but we'll wait. It's going to be wonderful, and we'll be looking for that. And Lil, is there anything that you need to add in?
Yeah, I just first would like to say thanks to both of you for such a enriching discussion. This is also now going to be saved onto our channel, so people can continue to watch it and forward and rewind as much as they like to learn all the pearls that you've shared today. So yeah, I want to encourage people to check the chat because the links are there. I shared to Amazon, I shared to these books, I shared to Gender You. Also, all the links are there to Dr. Colt's website, the Gender Doc.
Thank you for sharing this webinar. We appreciate
of course,
it.
Too, are links to all of the references that we've discussed today. So yes, as Dee said, we'll be back next month of this monthly series with Ian Maynard, featuring, as I mentioned in the beginning, the voices of people in the community, partners, parents, and educators of people in transition. So stay tuned and do not forget to support your local community groups, like some of the ones we've mentioned today. And thanks for joining us. For the people who were viewing us, we had quite a few people here watching today. So we really appreciate that.
I just want to interject and say once more, thank you to our medical health and mental health professionals, everyone behind the scenes, those that work in the hospitals, those that are teachers, and everyone that's in the front line to help everybody during this time. And I cannot say enough that without you, we would be nowhere.
Yes, you are stunning, and you are brave, and you are beautiful.
Surgeons, everyone that's there to help make our lives a little better and safer. Thank you.
Absolutely, Dee. So important. Thank you for adding that in.
These people are so fake.
People like yourselves who are bringing topics to the table, like the ones we've been speaking about today. So important.
I'm glad you're passing that along.
Oh, please.
By the way, I do plan to make a clip of a couple of those sections where we're talking specifically about how the person is lying. So you may want to pass those on, but definitely pass along the full thing, because this person flat lied in their testimony. I'm sorry. Based on this conversation, this is very different from what we heard in the testimony. Now, granted, we aren't done watching this person's testimony yet. Actually, you know what? Why don't we just cut it there? We don't need to listen to the last 2 seconds. We're not even done watching this person's testimony yet. So that was happy hour for the day. Now, guys, there are a couple things happening this weekend. Number one, of course, we have Socialism Saturday at 6 p.m. tomorrow. I don't know what we're watching yet because I have to find it. But tune in at 6 p.m. tomorrow. I promise it's going to be dystopian as F. And I'm going to try to find some time to watch a little bit more of that Texas testimony. I'd like to have a little bit of a longer stream to really get through it. Maybe that'll happen on Sunday, which I usually don't stream on Sunday, but maybe that'll happen on Sunday. So keep an eye on my social media, on my Twitter, on my locals, on all the places, on YouTube. I'll let you guys know when this is happening, but I'm not sure when it's going to happen yet. At the latest, we'll pick it up again next week, but I would like to kind of sit through and do the full testimony because there's just so much to watch, and it's so, so, so good. And if you haven't watched the first 3 parts of it, they are on my channel right now. You can get caught up. If you haven't been caught up, that's totally fine, but they're really, really valuable. And I think it's great. How was the beer? I mean, I think it's pretty good. It's very alcoholic, which is why I haven't had that much in 2 hours. But cheers, guys. Oh gosh, that's right. Fuck Easter. I can't do it on Sunday. It's Easter. Well, I guess I could do it, but people are going to be spending their time with their families and at church and doing Easter egg hunts and eating chocolate rabbits or whatever real people do. I used to always get a white chocolate rabbit for Easter, and it was the best. That was like my favorite thing in the world. Anyway, we'll figure it out. All right, guys, settle down. We'll figure it out. But guys, that is all we have for this week. Now, Sunday for movie night, we're watching The Legend of Billie Jean in the supporter Discord. This movie is one of my favorite movies ever. It has an awesome soundtrack. If you are a supporter on Substack or on Locals or on Patreon, or if you are a member of this here YouTube channel, you will be getting a link inviting you to movie night for The Legend of Billie Jean. We do movie nights on Sundays at 8 p.m. in the supporter Discord. It's going to be great. And we will figure out the rest of this stuff at another time. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. Take care. Have a great rest of your day. Mount that like button on your way out the door, and we'll see you soon.